Are you ready? COC. Why you dealing with the cyber threat when you know you got an era right? Yeah. You are not alone, don't do it by yourself. Get you some defense will help. If you know you want to be cyber free, come and get you some COC. Satisfying controls, lock them access points. We won't disappoint. COC, fight cyber threats. Promise you will not regret. We go deep and penetrate. COC, come and see.
Hey. All right. Welcome to yet another episode of Crump on Cyber. In this episode, we're going to really kind of continue maybe a conversation that was in the previous episode where we explored some key elements of an incident response, maturity, cycle, and but we're going to go a bit deeper into it. Obviously, an organization is going to do what they can to put the appropriate controls in place and those kinds of things. But, even with the best of intentions, even with the best of plans, sometimes things go awry, right? And we run into challenges. And one of the more popular types of attacks that we're seeing over the last several years around this ransomware. So, yes, we'll talk about ransomware, what it is, and some of the drivers behind that kind of a thing, and what the footprint and the attack surface is looking like on a global basis. But then we're gonna shift gears and get into this. Okay, well, if I'm attacked, if I'm a victim of ransomware, then what do I do? And sometimes that means you need to call in the big dogs, okay? The ransomware negotiators and work through this kind of a process. And so we're going to go a little bit deeper into that. And we're going to have a special guest on, Juergen Weiss, who focuses on crisis management, cyber crisis management. And we're going to get his thoughts on ransomware negotiations, maybe some things around just in general cyber crisis readiness, and those areas. So we're going to explore that topic a bit deeper. So when it comes to ransomware, a recent report shows that the number of ransomware attacks remains absolutely steady in 2023. And when we look across really the highlights of that report, we see that about 1,900 ransomware attacks have occurred just within 4 countries: the US, the UK, Canada, and Germany. Now, the U.S. has bared the really kind of the brunt of that, with around 43% of these all global attacks targeted at the U.S. But hey, given the fact that the report talks about there are 48 really kind of separate ransomware groups out there that have targeted the U.S. Yeah, okay. Well, everybody's kind of sharing the love or sharing the hate, depending upon your perspective, or sharing the revenue opportunity by attacking the U.S. Now, in fact, there was when it comes to this average number of monthly attacks in the U.S., 75% increase between this year, the first and second quarter of this year versus last year. So there's absolutely an uptick in the activity on that front. And France has actually seen the number of their ransomware attacks double just in the last 5 months. The UK, on the other hand, a second largest ransomware target, has endured nearly 200 attacks just this year alone. And the ransomware groups are not really kind of running these one and done kinds of operations. There are, this group is they're tracking, the report talks about tracking these 32 separate ransomware groups that are attacking the UK. 7 of those have recorded at least 10 attacks each. So they're here to stay, right? In Germany, 9% of the attacks are targeted at the government sector. So it doesn't really matter, right? Where there's opportunities to cause problems, maybe get some money out of this deal, then yeah, the ransomware groups are going to kind of pursue that path, that potential revenue path. The most pervasive group, really this year, is CL0P. CL0P is derived from the Russian word klop, which means bed bug. And the group really kind of arrived on scene in 2019 using their namesake ransomware called Cryptomix. The ransomware itself, this Cryptomix ransomware family, uses the .clop extension for after decrypting the files, and so that's where they really kind of comes into play. Other notable groups highlighted in the report is Lockbit, Bbase, Play, Akira, and the volume attacks from relatively new groups such as Bbase with 41 attacks and Akira with 28 really, frankly, is staggering. Even the new ones coming to the game are, working hot and heavy to go try to get some revenue from some of these companies and the insurance companies behind them. The volume really does shift over time, though. So there's been a massive decrease from a group called Royal, which normally dominates the rankings with an average about 30 attacks per month. But there's been less than a handful or so over the last couple of months. And what the folks suspect is that it's because they're out there and they're testing a new decryptor. Now, CLOP's rise to the top can easily be explained by their exploitation of the 0 day in the Move IT or the Move It transfer, a widely used file transfer product. There we saw a bit of a compromise around that to cause some serious problems on a global basis. Lockbit has pulled in more than 1,200 attacks since 2020. To the tune of about $91 million that they've been able to pull out of U.S. organizations. Now, the U.S. Cybersecurity Infrastructure Agency, CISA, had requested or had reported that Lockbit was really, in their minds, the biggest ransomware threat in 2022. But we can see that they have, things do kind of shift as time kind of goes by there. The hardest hit were the state, local, tribal, and tribunal, the SLTT governments, at about 16% of these attacks from Lockbit. Earlier this year, a suspected Lockbit affiliate, though, was arrested right here in Arizona. So there's some progress being made on the enforcement and the law enforcement side of the house. All right. So this ransomware, or what is it and what kind of types are out there? Well, simply put, it's malicious software or malware that can really kind of lock out a victim, lock out a user from their computer or the data that they've got on there. And then the cyber criminal uses this as a leverage to try and extract a ransomware payment. And most often we see that on the Bitcoin side. And so that creates some challenges for the folks in the cryptocurrency side of the world when, it's being utilized to that degree. But that's a different kind of a battle that the cryptocurrency folks need to fight. But, once the payment is received, the victim is given a key to decrypt the systems and the files, thereby restoring access. That's the plan, or that's what's at least being presented. It's not always the case. So how do these threat actors load up ransomware? Well, if they're out there looking for systems that connected to the internet, if there's an opportunity to manipulate remote desktop protocol RDP, definitely do that. Certainly the use of malicious URLs or websites, malicious advertising or malvertising, drive-by downloads, infected emails and attachments. Yes, all of these are excellent conduits for getting infected by ransomware. So when it comes to ransomware itself, there are really kind of 5 different types, give or take. Obviously, all of this stuff is arguable to some degree, but we've got our crypto ransomware, and that's where the bad guys hack in and encrypt sensitive data. They're really not monkeying around with some of the basic computer functions. Whereas when we've got locker ransomware, yes, it actually locks the victim out of their computer. What they'll do, though, is they'll leave the mouse and keyboard usable. But aside from that, everything's really kind of locked down. Then there's scareware. Okay, and this is where they're making a false claim about a virus that had affected the victim's computer and trying to scare them into paying. Now, some versions of scareware can actually lock users out of the computer. Other versions will really kind of flood the victim's computer with a constant barrage of pop-ups. Then there's ransomware as a service. This is a dark web business model where this function of ransomware is being outsourced. And let me tell you, some of these ransomware as a service capabilities are high maturity organizations. Okay, they've got sales arms. They've got customer support. Really kind of world class customer support kind of a thing. And so you get to their site and you can IM encrypted IM with the folks that are running this ransomware as a service. So frankly, incredible. And then we have doxware or leakware, and that's where the bad guys really kind of threaten the release of sensitive information. And now we really kind of see a combination of both. And so they'll go extract the sensitive information, and they'll hold that, and then they'll encrypt. And then depending upon what the organization decides to do, hey, you're right. If you decide that you're not going to pay my ransomware, pay my ransom, then I'm going to, the threat of releasing it out there in a name and shame site. Okay, putting all that out there. Now there are a number of different kind of strains of ransomware that are out there. Cerber, Rabbit. We've got Petya, non-Petya, WannaCry, and so an entire set of strains that are out there. So when this ransomware, it's certainly a looming threat. We're seeing a lot of activity in this place. So what can an organization do to protect itself from these types of attacks? Well, certainly backups, right? Regular backups is really the number one kind of way to protect yourself when it happens. Now, obviously, you want to get ahead of the curve. And if you've got, you want to have some reliable antivirus installed that can kind of pick up some of this, make sure that your operating systems and software are patched and up to date. Making sure that you manage change within your organization. So knowing you've got, really need to know what's normal and expected on your assets, and then monitor for any kind of changes, anything that's outside of normal that could be potentially malicious activity. You certainly have to be able to do those kinds of things. But the changes is, okay, well, I've got to do some patches or I'm going to do some update. Well, you want to kind of control that, because we've seen a number of attacks over the last several years here where they truly are supply chain attacks. Now they're attacking the IT supply chain as opposed to perhaps like a manufacturing supply chain. All those are being compromised as well. But you need to keep track of these changes that are occurring within the organization themselves. That's from an organizational perspective and making sure those kinds of in place. Now, from a user perspective, yes, we certainly have a high degree of security awareness that needs to be, training and awareness training that needs to be in place for the employees at the company. So, making sure that they know that, hey, be careful about what you're downloading, or, frankly, if it's an employee, whether they can even download and install software. So, if we're going to allow them to do that, to make sure that it is from a reputable, secure site. Really, we know, don't click on any suspicious links or any file attachments, right? We've heard this 1,000 times, and yet it continues to happen. Certainly be wary and careful with any kind of pop-ups that show up, and be very, very leery and really kind of, frankly, untrusting towards any public Wi-Fi. And the way we can kind of protect ourselves against that is the employment of a VPN. But yes, despite all of these, things that we can do, these backups, and yeah, that's, and the antivirus, we're going to try and protect ourselves from bad things happening, but they can. Okay, so at that point, do we pay or do we not pay? Well, you might want to bring in a negotiator to help you out there. Now, instead of really kind of sending in the SWAT team to storm the building, and negotiations on these fronts take place in a slightly different format, right? So some of the recommendations we got out there, certainly is ensuring that you establish a cyber crisis management structure. And if you're looking for guidance around that, we'll talk with Juergen, and he'll have his thoughts on these things. But as we talked about yesterday, we have an incident maturity type of a life cycle, and as part of that process, it really kind of we explored is around building these cyber crisis management plans. And in there'll be a very kind of defined structure and flow that needs to be in there, keeping in mind that it is a plan, and plans change, and it is a framework, and so it needs to be tweaked and adjusted for every incident and situation in every organization. So get that structure in place and make sure you've got that. And then when something is actually happening, you got this situation, well, then you got to identify the scope or the extent of the incident itself, and being careful on the use of that term, even event versus incident, because once an organization starts, identifying that, we do have an incident, oftentimes that's going to trigger some kind of a notification process, depending upon, what industry they're in. So there can be some real kind of regulatory and legal implications of that designation. So if we're in there, and so we're trying to figure out, we talked about yesterday about the cyber crisis leadership skill sets that are required, and that sense making really is the one that most crisis leaders struggle with, right? But it is a critical element here. So determining the profile of the threat actor, identifying the scope of the incident, requires asking questions so that we can get a better sense of understanding of what's happening, what do we know now, and then and as the incident types evolves, then we get more information, right? So we can only make so many decisions, but we need to make some decisions across that process. So understanding the incident, also understanding our adversary. Okay. And there are different factors that can influence knowing this and help us out, frankly, whenever it comes to knowing our adversaries. So, if we can kind of, get some information, maybe understand the motivations and maybe even the culture of where the threat actors are coming from, we can utilize that as part of a strategy in these negotiations. But there is that activity around, okay, well, how do I kind of extract this information? And then once I have it, how do I leverage that? Well, how do I understand what the potential cultural implications are? And so there's some very interesting sources out there that in some of the training that we do, that highlights some of these cultural elements that certainly need to be understood to better understand who this adversary is. And then assessing the cost of a no deal. So, hey, okay, what if we get to this point where, you know what, we can't come to terms. We've negotiated, So what will be the impact if we can't or we refuse to make this payment to regain access? So you might, see, obviously some customer impacts, some operational impacts, brand and reputation impact, any kind of legal and regulatory potential impacts. Yes, you need to be able to kind of understand those kind of going into the situation. When it comes to the negotiations, general kind of recommendations, obviously be professional, right? And as you're going through there, and we saw some of this really in the Uber case that we kind of explored a little bit in the previous episode. But connecting as many pieces of the puzzle as that you can. Now, so has the IT team determined whether they can actually recover from this? Do we have backups? Well, it takes time to kind of figure that out. What is the impact of this ransomware? Where has it hit us in the organization? What kind of backups do we have? Well, sometimes that means you need to stall the adversary, right? We're working on it. We're getting this stuff. We're lining up the money, whatever that tactic is going to be. But you may need to kind of employ some of those things. And understanding that, yeah, negotiation just holistically is a bit of a mind game, right? So, and when we're talking about mind game, that means psychology. We talk about psychology of the humans, and then that ties back into what I was just talking about around trying to get a sense of where these folks are from and what the cultures are that affect them. And so those kinds of things will help you understand the motivations and how much flexibility or where you can push and prod and when it comes to the negotiation side of the house. If you can, because kind of befriend the criminal, right? You kind of draw them close. If you can do that, not only might you get some clues about their real life identity, but you might be able to negotiate a better outcome. So that befriending type of thing, this negotiation, we saw that actually play out to the benefit of Uber, because that team, although you might be some opinions about how the CISO there managed that situation, what the team was able to really do was determine, well, who are these folks? And then they were subsequently arrested. So, yeah, certainly you can leverage, whatever skills you've got from a personality perspective to kind of draw them in and maybe pick up some bits and pieces in there. And then ultimately, really kind of this decision on whether to pay or not. And most certainly that's going to be left to the organizational's, leadership, the CEO, oftentimes legal and general counsel going to be involved in that decision-making process. Absolutely, right? Because there could be some legal implications whether you pay or you don't pay. They're gonna be there are some entities that, hey, you cannot pay. In the United States, we've got a designated list of individuals, and, you're not allowed to pay them. So your hands are tied in some of these situations. So you gotta consider that stuff. And then, hey, do you even have the money? One of the things we talk about is, these threat actors, they get into your environment, they start digging around, right? And they're not just digging around looking for, just the secret recipe on how you build a drone. No, these are financially motivated threat actors. So they're digging around and they're looking for things like, oh, maybe a copy of your cyber insurance policy. If they can get their hands on those kinds of things, then they'll have a sense of how much money can they reasonably extract. What are your limits? So you got to consider those things. And if you don't, or if the ask is above and beyond what your insurance, frankly, do you have the money to be able to do that? And then, yeah, most certainly make sure that you have some experts at the ready. So, for any of these crisis incidences, in any organization, any plan that's being built for clients around their cyber crisis management plan, external legal counsel, right? So these are the folks that are going to be brought in to really kind of run the show during the investigation. Okay. And then you have external IR. And as part of that, you may get that negotiator capability there, or you might go to a third party to kind of get that. And then what happens is that external IR and that negotiator is going to operate underneath that external legal entity. Okay. So, speaking of experts, we're going to take just a short break, and when we come back, we're going to bring Juergen Weiss on the phone or on the call, the podcast here, and see what he's got to say about this. We'll be right back.
COC, we'll be right back, baby. COC's back. Come get you some.
Mr. Weiss, how are you, sir?
Hi, Jeffrey. Nice to see you. How are you?
Yeah, I'm doing well. Absolutely. I know you're doing well because I see some of the things that's happening in your world with some of the awards and accolades that you're getting. Maybe just spend a few moments kind of, giving the listeners a little bit of a background of who you are, your organization, and what you've done, and most certainly highlight some of those awards that I think you've been receiving over there.
Okay. Yeah, thanks for the invite. So my name is Juergen Weiss. I'm the CEO of RS Cyber Intelligence in Austria. So we are basically located in the German-speaking area, but now extended our services the whole Europe. We are focused on crisis management and incident response, but also doing our research stuff. So we are working on some kind of secret projects within the research sector when it comes to quantum computing and cryptography, for example. We managed since the past years, I want to say 4 to 5 years, around about 200 incidents, paid only 3 times ransom, decrypted some kind of ransoms that we are not allowed to mention in public. We handled one of the biggest ransomware acts in let's say in the German-speaking area with an IT service provider. Attacked 35 companies at the same time, and this was one of the projects that we got this kind of award for the incident responder of the year in 2022.
Brilliant. Well, congratulations. Yeah, that's it's great to see that. All right, so really kind of first and foremost, because we want to be proactive, right? If we can prevent this and make sure we're prepared for when bad things happen, what kind of recommendations do you have for organizations to get kind of what we say left of boom, prepared in advance? What kinds of things can you recommend for organizations?
That's phenomenal. Always when I hear prepared, I'm thinking about my beginning in the CrossFit sector. So I always been prepared for the unknown. So that's what I learned. So prepared for the workout of the day that did not know. And I took this and built it in my presentations and say, guys, when you are so frightened about ransomware or cyber attacks, you need to be prepared. You need to know who is involved, who is able to make decisions, who is allowed to transfer money, and you need an external partner to help you, giving you another view of this kind of incident. And we have now, with our experience of more than 200 incidents, a lot of possibilities and ideas and so to say preparation things that we can provide to our customers to get that party started when that kind of stuff happens. So what we recommend is
great.
creating internal teams, internal incident response teams from the IT, from the management, raise the awareness, and build a kind of a cybersecurity culture. So we are talking for more than 10 years now about digitalization and the culture of digitalization. But it's most important to also talk about the cybersecurity culture, that every single employee is involved and could be the first responder. No CEO is aware of that what happens in their operations during the day. Not really. It's the lady in the secretary. It's the bookkeeper, for example, when a client turns into a blue screen and nothing works again. Or if they got a malicious email with an Excel file and a PowerShell link. So, what to do? Give the employees the possibility to talk to the IT, to give the alert to them. So, I'm not sure about this email. Can I provide it to you? Or I click the fish alert button in my Outlook, for example. And the other thing is do your homework. So one network for everything is not that what really works, what makes it secure. So network segmentation. Do your homework, do your vulnerability management, do your vulnerability assessment, and maybe do not a pen test once a year. It only tells you about the current situation. So doing pen tests on a monthly basis, for example, or on a weekly basis, and do the gap analysis between the scans and between the pen tests. This is most of the important thing. And when it comes to policies, create that kind of reaction and crisis plan that you already mentioned. This is the most important thing. And I need to say that our customers, when it comes to an incident, these are new customers. So it's not existing customers that we provide with our SOC services. These are new customers. They have a kind of an IT service provider. Sometimes it's a one-man show. Sometimes it's 10 people. But sometimes it's an IT service provider with 200 employees. Get the work done with them.
Yeah. So when that being the case, so if they're for a lot of these clients, if they're not coming to you ahead of time, and so they're not benefiting from the consultation, here's the strategic and tactical approach of the things that you need to kind of do, then what are you finding then when they start knocking it, they call you up and say, hey, we've got a problem. Are you finding that they are ready, that they do have plans, or they just have nothing and they're just
absolutely no. They don't even know whom to call. So they have a cyber insurance policy, for example. Maybe there is a hotline number, but maybe there is some kind of other institution they should call. But they are also going to the next police station and tell them, there is a fraud ongoing. Yeah, I have a ransomware incident. And the officers in the police department say, nice for the information, but we are not able to help. Yeah, and they are not allowed to recommend a service provider or an expert company. So how we get that kind of information? We are not doing a lot of marketing, but we have the word of mouth. So there is a CEO that already worked with us, and if something happens, it's in the newspaper, and some companies are doing keynotes about their learnings and the lessons learned, and say, hey, with whom did you work to in that case? And I say, hey, call them. They helped us and they fixed everything right in. And it's the word of mouth mostly. And when we do the call, we have the first, let's say, crisis situation call or situation analysis. What happened? When did it happen? Who was involved? Who did it recognize it? And what happened already? So did you do anything? So funny things that we had an IT service provider bringing the offsite backup, the good one, back into the company, and he just installed the good backup in the compromised environment. the good backup is gone.
Right. Right.
It's so this is the missing, the lack of knowledge. And that's why we are in the preparation for us. We are talking to the customer and say you need to separate the IT operations with a service provider to a cybersecurity operations service provider. So it's not helpful when your IT system company says just use Microsoft and Microsoft security products. Yeah, you will be fucked. Yeah, by the end of the day. Yeah, and in the incident case, when we did the situation analysis, we have two mobile incident response teams. So we have malware analysts, we have threat intelligence, we have reverse engineers, we have forensic guys, and we have at least now 3 cyber crisis managers. They're able to handle that kind of situation. And you need to be calm because the customer is panicking around.
Yeah.
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 So
yeah, when you don't have a plan, that's where you end up, right? Is
yes.
very lost and very concerned. And I was actually thinking about this on the drive-in to the office today. For organizations like that, right? That there can be maybe what I would call an A plan, right? So you've got okay, so we know that these cyber crisis management plans need to be, obviously very unique and specific to a given client. But I was thinking, I wonder if I can create a baseline plan that I could give to any new customer, like you were talking about. They come to me and they say, we got nothing. Please help me, right? Oftentimes having something, although it's not necessarily the end all be all, it's not necessarily has to be customized at that point, but to have a plan. And that's why I would call it the A plan that, okay, look, you have no structure, but I'm going to give you this baseline guidance here, right? So here, now your team has something, and that is going to give them some emotional relief, right? Now, kind of a process. So when you have this opportunity, to your point, you've got cyber crisis managers on the staff there. When you have the opportunity to go in and build these cyber crisis management plans, can you maybe just kind of highlight some of the key elements of what you would kind of typically expect to kind of see in there?
First of all, we separated into the cyber crisis strategy and also the incident response from a technical perspective. So what we would like to know is how does your infrastructure work on the one hand? What are your backup cycles? What do you use kind of software? Who is your service provider? Whatever. That's the forensic, the technical part. I'm mostly focused on who is responsible in the crisis, who is leading the crisis team, who is how available anytime, 24/7, and what is our decision-making framework. So what is the cost of deal? What is the cost of no deal? Do we have a balance sheet in place that we can calculate immediately? What is the ransom that we need to negotiate? Do we know how much money we have in the bank account? Yeah. Do we have an external service provider that do the blackmail and the transaction into Bitcoins or Moneros or whatever? Yeah. To have everything in place, following the steps like you mentioned. Yeah. That's the A plan. Yeah. This is a checklist. Kill the command and control. Go offline. Yeah. Don't shut the servers down. Yeah. And what you're not able to plan is this little bit of luck. This is always happening in some incidents. We had an incident on a manufacturing company where we are in the data center and talking about storage and backup, and that everything is not encrypted, it's nulled, it's deleted. And so, by the way, there was a storage on the floor. And I said, well, what are you using with the old storage? Yeah, we set it up in new storage 1 month ago. I said, oh, 1 month ago? So did you already delete the data in the old storage? No. I would say a data loss of 1 month. Can you live with that?
Right.
Yeah, and afterwards you start to puzzle around. So if you have local instances, mailboxes or whatever, where you can restore the data.
Oh, okay.
We had one case. Well, it was so funny. It was in the lockdown time in Austria, so we were not allowed officially, to work and to be together. And we had an incident, a family-owned company, and we are in the data center having our second beer. To be honest, it was late in the evening, and funny thing is that we said, "Oh, did you try to delete the ending of that file and see if this just renamed, but not encrypted?" And I said, "No, that I don't believe that." I said, "I bet on that. 100 euros, do it now." And he did it, and 50% of the data were still here, available.
Right.
And that's the most important thing in profiling. Yeah. So you need to profile the kind of ransomware and the threat actor to know what they are doing first. Are they renaming the files, or do they encrypt first? Yeah. And that's kind of difficult. And you mentioned also before the ransomware as a service. Yeah. So we are separating also in the preparation phase. What happens if we receive an email from the threat actor with a ransom of 50K, for example? Or what happens if we have a professional ransomware group using the dark web and their service desk, to define, first of all, the first 3 steps in negotiations?
Yeah. So for an organization, what do you think that that decision-making logic is like as to whether or not to bring in a negotiator?
That's the CEOs starting negotiating, that we have every second incident that someone started clicking the link, starting the counter or whatever. Yeah. We can only raise awareness if we're doing keynotes and tell them, "Hey, don't do this, just call it." Yeah. When we are in that kind of situation, normally there was already an expert, and a self-named expert that we had once in a manufacturing company, and he was doing 10 days creating flip charts and selling new firewalls. Yeah, nothing happened. Normally, these kind of things. I lost the question. Sorry.
When I was around that decision-making logic, whether or not to bring in a negotiator. Yeah.
We created a kind of methodology. We call it 4DEC. So we are working based on facts. We are creating options for the IT team and the forensics. We are having the analysis of the risk if this option happens or did not work. We make the decision. We agree all on the decision, that the whole team and the management is behind the decision, and we execute the decision. But afterwards, we also need to take control of the decision. Did it work or did it not work? With that kind of method, we can have a baseline for the decision making. Yeah. So the next thing is the backup. We need the feedback. Also, we are separating the crisis management with the forensic team, and the forensic team gets for every single part, so to say, network firewall, endpoints, storage, whatever, gets an internal from the IT and an expert from us. So they're building in teams of 2, and they get their tasks. And they come back with the task when they are done. So they have around about 2 hours time. And then we created within an hour for the crisis meeting to say, okay, this is our facts that we have. We have a backup offsite. We have everything encrypted, or we are down. We don't have a backup for the past 2 years. We need to go bankrupt, or we need to pay the ransom. And when we are paying the ransom is, you need to prepare everything in the same time. You have the counter that puts a lot of pressure to the CEO. It's a physical thing, yeah. But the first thing is adding 2 days, 3 days, negotiating around that. It's fine, yeah. That works. And then in negotiations is always, so I do being respectful. The communication set is, I would like to know what you have. I would like to see how you communicate. We're doing linguistic forensics, so start right side writing, left side writing, or there's space, everything. How do they write, and what time do they write? Yeah, how fast do they respond, or how slow do they respond? Because we also have to have an eye on a possible insider. We had a case in the aerospace and defense. We had an insider, and he was writing via proton mail, not via the dark web, via proton mail. He was writing before he started his work, in the lunchtime, and then in the evening. And he was always mentioning some terms that we use in crisis management, like cost of deal, cost of no deal, something like that. And he mentioned that in the email, and I said to the CEO, "Oh, we need to be careful. We have a guy in the team who is involved."
Yeah, they speak in your language. Yeah,
yes,
or speak in the language of the organization. Yeah,
this is what I try to get into. Yeah, to know, is it the boy next door? Is it the script kiddie in his room at home with the hoodie, trying a little bit around, or is it a professional? And in that case, we had espionage, because this guy sold plans for spare parts in the aerospace sector to China. And China produced that, or wanted to produce the spare parts for the Russian market.
Yeah, so that's
use the
interesting, the supply chain. Yeah, that's very interesting, especially, you know, we're seeing a lot of stuff here in the US around this new DoD CMMC thing, and then so that has certainly international implications, and so that's very interesting. So you hit on a couple of things there. So what I thought was really kind of important is that, look, you have to make decisions, right? With sometimes limited information, and sometimes that, you know, doesn't work out the way that you thought you would, but now you've got a new dynamic and a new situation, and you have to reassess and now make another decision. And that's the best that you can kind of do. Now, what about the skills of a negotiator? What are the things that an organization, if they're out there going, okay, I'm gonna go find myself an external negotiator. Let's set up some interviews. What do we ask these folks, right? How do we know whether they know what the heck they're doing or not?
Yeah, the thing is that when the incident already happened, you will not have an interview. You get the recommendation for that kind of guy. And to be honest, I don't know a lot of this kind of crisis manager. As in that way, we do this thing. We train our own employees to come into that kind of role. You have a lot of crisis managers when it comes to safety, but not when it comes to security. But there are similar parts. One of the most important thing is that he is very communicative, that he is very calm. He's very calm, or she should be very calm. So not a very pushy and stressy guy. And sometimes you need to have that kind of military characterism. Say, this is the decision, we go this way, and this is the best. Follow me. Or your concerns is this, is like that, and no, will not work. And also the crisis manager negotiator, we are responsible for the whole documentation of that kind of incident for the insurance companies. Because especially in Europe, every single manager and CEO has his private liability for that cases.
Yeah,
so
we talked about this yesterday. Yeah, the personal liability for the actions, the readiness of the organization, and the actions taken during that incident response. There's real risk there to the individual, right? Professionally?
Absolutely. But funny thing beside, we do have now some of the big four companies coming after post-incident to us as a service provider, where we protected or saved the business, And they would like to see how much hourly rates we took, what our documentation looked like, and they try to pressure us. And that's not a very fair way, so to say.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we are really picky when we take incidents at the moment, and yeah.
Okay. So so those are important kind of skills. Now, have you seen any situations, maybe not, you're not your organization, but have seen out there, just kind of, what's happening in other parts of the world where poor negotiator skills have created some problems?
Oh man, where should I start? I don't spell names, but there are some kind of the self-named negotiators. They take 30K upfront from the customer, and then tell them 2 days after, you have the money, pay the ransom. That's not the right way. We found a cyber crisis manager, also self-named, with no experience. He was a former digital marketing guy or whatever. I'm in the IT industry for more 24 years now, so I know what I do. And I think you need to be born ready for that kind of cyber crisis manager. And sorry.
No, go ahead. No, when you finish that thought, I'm going to tell you about some of the biological testing we've done around this.
Yeah. I have one case that I mentioned with the guy, the crisis manager, with the 10 days with the flip charts, yeah, and not having a forensic guy and an incident response team. They just tried to create strategies and charged a lot of money, and the company lost 600K per day.
Wow.
We came there on a Tuesday around lunchtime. We did the first analysis. We had the whole communication up and running during the night until Wednesday, and the whole production running on Friday.
Wow,
full.
That's incredible.
And,
yeah, it's very impactful
testing,
when you bring in experts, right?
yes, and this is what we also discuss with cyber insurance companies. They have their own IT network, and they charge, for example, $100 to $150 an hour. We are charging a little bit more, but we don't take 40 days.
Right.
We have it in 3 to 5 days. Depends also on the backup, depends on the customer size, for sure, yeah, to be honest. But the average small, medium business with 1,000 employees is able to handle that within that time.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So, I always use the phrase, when you need a plumber, you call a plumber. When you need a cyber crisis management expert, you need a cyber crisis management expert. When you need somebody with negotiator skills, you need somebody with negotiator skills. And it's difficult to be everything for everybody, right? So that, you need some skills here.
Yes. So I didn't get the skills with my work in IT before for some big companies. So I trained my skills. So I did my education was in cybercrime profiling in the US, but also in Israel. Very strong relation to Israel when it comes to negotiation skills. And I would say my character is from nature, from a psychological aspect. I have skills, and I always try to find a solution for both sides, also for the dark side. Yeah, they would like to have money, but we also get paid. And we had also not direct ransom payments. We had post-incident ransom payments. Where I said, hey, a small amount, customer is here to pay a small amount to delete the data from the darknet, from the operator side. That works also. But you need to build a trusted relationship. You need to give a little bit, then you get a little bit.
Yeah. Brilliant.
Some of the negotiators I heard, they're heavily their communications are, no, we're doing this and we don't care what you write and what you would like to have. Hey, no, these are also, sometimes you're humans, sometimes you're chatting at the first step with chatbots.
Right.
But you figure that out very fast, so that's not the problem. And what also is very important, what happened in the last month and on your side in an incident, is there are threat actors. They would like to fool also ransomware groups. So they're looking on the operator side, for example, for Lockbit, and they see the counter, and they're looking for the emails of the victims, and they try to get in touch with them and offer them a 50% discount with a new wallet. So they try to steal the ransom. And if you're not aware as a crisis manager and negotiator and see, oh, this is another QTEX ID, this is another Bitcoin wallet ID, you're also liable for that kind of decisions. Sure.
All
So
right.
it's not easy to
No.
be in that kind of business. And from a psychological or mental health aspect, also we are working 20 hours a day, 7 days a week. And we also had CEOs that committed suicide in that time. They had thoughts about suicide because they are ruined. And now this is my responsibility to bring them help with crisis intervention teams and specialists to help them also. So we are not just negotiators or crisis managers. We are also looking for the people.
Yeah. There's you mentioned before, and I think I had said something about this as well, around the psychological factors, and there is a lot of psychology involved in this, and understanding the threat actor, the motivations, their society, the cultural backgrounds, because that can give you clues on how they, how will they negotiate with you, and what are their motivations, how convicted are they. So a bit of an art for sure, and a bit of a science. And we share a similar background with regard to the passion around the cyber criminal offender profiling. I love that kind of stuff, right? Getting into it, because it can contribute to these crisis types of situations. Okay, so just as a wrap up, maybe can provide some recommended approaches when engaging with a ransomware group? But how do you approach that? Let's say, okay, your situation sounds like the vast majority of those, there's somebody who's already started talking to these guys, and now you're picking up. Okay, so I'm interested in that dynamic, because we know that some threat actors will be like, hey, you bring in a negotiator and it's game over, right? Type of a thing. So have you run into that? How do you kind of approach that first conversation?
How do they know if I'm the negotiator or not?
How do they know? That's right. Well, yeah, exactly.
That's the first thing. So playing with the same rules they play. I don't know who they are. Yeah, but to be honest, I'm working with some kind of nicknames. They're I think some at the moment already familiar with some kind of ransomware groups. But what we do is we separate it. We do the profiling and say, okay, this conversation comes via email, and it's a ransomware demand for 14K. So it looks like it's a script kiddie, or ransomware is a service collection of 3 different ransomware groups. So if the victim pays the money, you don't have a proof for a decryptor. So that starts a different negotiation. Then knowing it's Lockbit affiliate, there is the link, there is the QTalks chat, and there is the operational site with the service desk.
Okay.
And then you structure step by step. So what is my goal? What I would like to know? I'm not fooling around, to be honest. I'm always being very clear. So we know what happened. We investigated in that. We have a clear situation. What are the next steps in our negotiations? Yeah. For sure, I'm playing with creativity. I'm fooling around a little bit. I'm trying different languages. Yes, that's common. Yeah, because I'm improving the reaction of that. Yeah, and then when it comes to have an agreement on a deal, we separate that kind of agreement in 3 steps. So I would like to know if the decryptor works. We have seen that ransomware group damaged the storage by the encryption. Yeah, because the storage was down. Yeah. the decryptor in that case was not helpful for me, not useful. So I need to be clear in my communication and say, you did this and you did that, and I can send you a proof that it's done, it's gone, it's not decryptable. Yeah?
Right.
And this is, sometimes I'm brutally honest, sometimes a lie. Yes, that's the fact. But this also is done by the ransomware groups.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
Same tactics, techniques, procedures. Right.
Yes, for sure.
Yeah.
It's like the say. It's like you say the CrossFit with prepared for the unknown. It's know your enemy.
Right.
So we playing in the same field with the same rules, and that could be a benefit for the ransomware group or not. It depends. Yeah. So I would say our success in negotiations is quite high. Because of our skills in the forensics and the decryption and what we put effort into it. Not only negotiations, it's the cases we handled. So we are talking about ransomware groups like Black Matter, Black Cat, Lockbit, LV, the big ones, where I also received death threats. So this is the other side of the medal. Yeah. So it's for me, it's to be in that kind of podcast, a little bit of dangerous.
Right.
But yeah, there is a codex, so to say. Yeah. And I will always remind on that kind of codex. Yeah. No people damage.
Right. Right. Yeah. Yeah.
Sometimes they know the codex, sometimes
right.
they don't know the codex.
Yeah. There's not a lot of honor amongst thieves, right? Yeah.
It's always about the money. So hackers against hackers. So they would like to have the ransom from this group. They have like the ransom from that group. Yeah. That's the game.
It's a game. All right. Brilliant. Juergen, it's been fantastic having you on. Great conversation. I'm so happy to hear about see the success that your organization's having and you as well. So keep up the great work. And thank you for joining today's show.
Thanks a lot, Jeffrey. Thanks for having me, and stay safe.
All right. You too.
Now you know you're feeling better after deep dosing on COC.